Hi everyone, welcome back to Supreme by Sarah Pearl. I am your host, Sarah Pearl, and I am excited to talk to you guys this week about a topic that's continued on from last week actually. But before I get into it, I do want to welcome my new listeners. Thank you guys for joining Supreme by Sarah Pearl and tuning in. I hope that it serves as a valuable resource to you along your personal development journey, because one thing that we want this podcast to be is a resource to you as you go about your own life experiences along your personal development journey, okay? And also, if you're not already taking the personal development journey, I want to encourage you to get on it, because we all are here on divine purpose, okay? And you have potential in you that you can't even identify within yourself right now. And so we're all about helping you strive for that potential, okay? And so what we're going to do today is continue on from last week's topic. And last week I asked you a very important question. What kind of life are we living if it does not require God's divine intervention? Okay, now let me qualify that question a little bit, because what I'm not saying is that when we live just like a standard life, I just going through the motions, that God is not in it. He's definitely in it. But I am suggesting that if it does not require God's glory and his ability to perform miracles and signs of wonders and things like that in your life, then you may be making God smaller in your life than what his actual capacity is. Because if you're going to work, coming home, cooking dinner, maybe working out, hanging out with friends, like whatever the case may be, God doesn't have to be very big in your life in order for you to sustain a lifestyle like that, right? And so what I am suggesting is that if you are striving for your maximum potential and you're striving for your divine purpose, you will be able to make space, like you will naturally make space for God to show up in your life, because now you are taking leaps and bounds towards the things you want, and that leaves so much space for God to show up and to perform in your life. And so when I ask you, what kind of life are you living if it doesn't require God's divine intervention? That's exactly what I mean, okay? And so last week I talked a little bit about one of the characteristics that I noticed in my own life when I was not living a life that required God's divine intervention. I was just going through the motions, okay? So if you haven't listened to last week's episode, please do that, because today is a continuation on that, because I'm going to talk about another characteristic that I realized in my life that was not when I was not living a life where I was making space for God to show up. Okay, and so last week one of the characteristic that I brought up was that I didn't have a vision for my life, and I was spiritually disconnected from him. And so please go back and listen to that episode, because I think a lot of people can find themselves in that situation, and it holds them back from actually starting their personal development journey in the first place. But one thing, what I want to talk about this week, because I do want you to go back and listen to last week's, but what I'm going to talk about this week is the fact that when I was in that spot, when I was in that place in my life, I realized that I was relying on something else or someone else to provide for me. Okay, let me qualify that again. So when I was completely null of any dream or vision for my life, okay, I realized that I was relying on something or someone else to provide for me. Okay, now here's a truth that I want you to take with you for the rest of your days, okay? Anything that's outside of God is inadequate, okay? And so when I realized this characteristic, okay, when I had this hindsight that I have, when I realized that this was like something that I possessed during that time, I realized I was depending on people like my job, like my boss to tell me oh, we want to promote you to this role, and we want you to do this and that, and you could be so successful here, and whatever the case may be. And I'll tell you a little story after this. But I was relying on external sources to tell me what my next step was. Okay. When in reality, my next step, I knew all along. It was internal. God was telling me, I knew the things that I needed to do, but I was so disconnected that I couldn't make that step. Okay. So we live in a world where there are people who are willing and they are ready to tell you their perspective on what you could be good at, what their purpose for you that they have in their own lives. Like, they're willing to tell you and ready to tell you that. And a key example, I'm going to talk a lot about jobs and bosses and things like that in this episode, just because it's a very easy way for you to kind of see where I'm coming from. And I was talking to a friend the other day who recently left their job to pursue like their spiritual purpose, right? And that's something that I commemorate. Like, I think that takes a tremendous amount of courage and a tremendous amount of self-awareness to be able to do that. And they admittedly were terrified to make that leap into entrepreneurship, because the first thing they thought about was, how am I going to pay my bills, right? And that's obviously, as an adult, that is a logical question and a very real question to ask yourself. And this is just a side note. Money is never as important as your mental health, and it's never as important as your spiritual well-being. My friend was suffering from being at this company, not because the company was bad. They actually had like a really healthy culture. Like, people got along with each other, and the managers were understanding, and it was a really easy place to work, right? It wasn't too demanding or anything. But because his spiritual purpose was being neglected, it resulted in mental health challenges. He was oftentimes frustrated. He was oftentimes he showed mild signs of like depression, like not being able to express his self-confidence and things like that. But I'll talk about that another time, because that's a whole different topic. But ultimately, my friend decided to step away from his job, even though the primary thing on his mind was like, man, I'm not going to be able to make the money that I was making right off the bat, right? So that was his primary concern. And while he was putting in his notice, his boss was trying to convince him to stay, because at the end of the day, he was a great employee, okay? And he performed well in his job. He was almost convinced to stay with the company, because at the end of the day, he was kind of second guessing himself. Like, should I step away? Should I stay? And the primary reason that he was thinking about staying was because of the money, right? But so while he was putting in his notice, and his boss was trying to convince him to stay, he almost went for it, because she was like, I had plans to promote you, and you have like this great future, with the company and all these things. And he said that it was flattering, like it was very flattering, and he almost went for it. But it convinced him, like when she said that, it convinced him that there's no way that what's best for me. Okay. However, now the company was right to say that his future is bright with the company, and he'll do well in the position and all those things. But they say that, and I say I'm speaking in general for like anybody who's trying to give you advice on what you should do. They say those things without the knowledge of what your spiritual purpose is. So their perspective and advice, however well-intended it may be, it does not have your best interest in mind. My best spiritual interest at all. Like, they don't even know what your spiritual purpose is. So there's no way for them to have like your best spiritual purpose or your best spiritual interest in mind. So my question to you is, are you depending on someone or something else to promote you, to secure your finances, or whatever else? Are you depending on somebody else to do that for you? Or do you believe deep down that you can, with the help of the Almighty God, that you can make it out here without having to sacrifice your spiritual purpose for it? Okay? That is a question that I want to pose to you. And I want to reiterate, Anything outside of God is inadequate. So you may be promoted. Okay, you may be promoted to the highest levels in a company. You may have well over 6 figures coming in on a yearly basis. But if God is not in it, you will inevitably have a missing piece, a sense of unfulfillment. You may be frustrated. You may feel like you're on a rat wheel. You may feel like, I don't know, you may feel unhappy, dissatisfied. It may show up in your life in that way. And I want to make one more point, because on this topic, I will discuss it in the next episode. But when you are not in tune with God, your creator, the source, then you will fall into all of the plans that people have for your life. You will go with it thinking like, yeah, this is great for me. But at the end of the day, if it's not in alignment with your spiritual purpose, then you will always have this disconnect, right? And it's important for you to understand that's what this personal development journey is for. It's for you to tap into who you truly are so that you can govern your life. Okay, so that you can govern your life and no one else can tell you what's best for you. You know why? Because you're so tuned in with yourself and God that you know what's best for you. Okay, and you're not gonna take any cop or any imitations of that. Okay, so in the Supreme by Sarah Pearl fashion, I do want you to journal about that. Okay, I want you to journal about who you're relying on, like where does your faith really lie, and don't answer it like from a like you know what the right answer is, you know what you should say. Answer it from the fruits on your tree, the actions that you're taking. Who are you relying on to provide for you? Who are you relying on to give you the next steps of your life? Are you able to think for yourself? Are you able to lay out the steps that you want to take in your life? Or is somebody else laying it out? Is it based upon what positions are open in your company? Or is it based upon the ideas and the creativity that's instilled into you from God? Like, I want you to answer those questions truthfully, and we'll come back next week and talk a little bit more about it. Now, I appreciate you guys tuning in. Feel free to reach out to me with any questions you have. You can always follow me on my personal social media pages. Facebook and Instagram is Sarah Pearl Thomas. And then I also have a Supreme by Sarah Pearl Facebook page that you can follow. It's Supreme by Sarah Pearl. And then also Supreme by Sarah Pearl YouTube channel that you can subscribe to. I look forward to connecting with you guys next week. And you guys have an awesome week of personal development. Y'all have a good one. Love you. Bye.